Kinda sound, tuned in for change.
And welcome to KindaCreative with me, Django. And today I have a guest once again. It's been a while. John, welcome back to the show.
Hello, Django. Thank you once again for having me and taking me out of my 6x6 foot room cubicle where I am currently quarantining. Feels like something between a nightmare and a holiday.
That is you guys can't see it on the video if you're listening on the station, but this will be up on my YouTube channel next week. But yeah, John's got a very small room. You can see most of the corners of it on the camera right now. Quarantining, does that mean you were exposed?
I have the plague, yes.
You have the plague.
The ironic thing about this experience, which is now day 3 of 10 or something, is that my wife has moved out to stay with my folks, and there's not a lot of work that I should do. You know, I shouldn't be keeping too busy while I recover. So it really is starting to feel like a vacation. I am free all day, every day, to just do whatever I feel. And I can highly recommend it.
Yeah, awesome, man. That's great. In my household, we also had 2 scares. So we didn't actually get COVID, but I had dinner with someone who got sick 2 days later. And then just as my little 10-day, I think it's supposed to even be 14 possibly if you don't test, but I think we'd sort of agreed that 10 was suitable. In our house, at least. I wasn't going out into the street. It was just like, all right, there's only so much of this we can take. But then on day 10, we get the news that the guy I'm staying with had been exposed having lunch with someone. So like the exact same thing. So we tiptoed around each other for another 10 days. It was very funny. Anyway.
Oh, shame. You locked yourself in there with the source of the chaos.
So what was very funny though was like just as that had all subsided, someone came to me with a wedding gig at the last minute because he had been exposed, and I turned it down saying like my housemates and I aren't very comfortable right now. We've just finished spending days tiptoeing around each other, and I felt like it was a warning to me, like actually I should probably not be taking gigs where I need to be playing for like 6 hours and then having to find someone to replace me last minute like he was. So
sensible move, man. Sensible move.
Bands are different because at least if one person can't make it, the show still goes on, you know.
Yeah, that's what happened to me yesterday. I was the person that couldn't make it, and unfortunately, I wasn't able to play. It would have been nice to earn a bit of bucks, but it's mostly just about the mental health that you get from having a jam. You know,
yeah.
That's what I'm kind of missing, and it's only day 3, so I don't know. I'm already standing in the living room with no shirt on, playing metal guitar. So I don't know where this train's going, man.
It's going to the loony bin.
It's like a vipassana. It's like a vipassana silent retreat without any of the limitations.
Oh, funny. Wow. Okay. Well, cool. With that out the way, what have you been up to as well? So obviously, I don't remember how I introduced you, but you're the front man of Pravda, and currently the only man of Pravda because we haven't actually played as a band in a while.
The ghost band.
Drummer, but yes. And then you've also been doing an album a month for people to use in their podcasts, live streams, all that sort of stuff. Royalty-free music.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, album number 23 coming out in 2 weeks.
So it's been in 2 years.
Yeah, it's been about 2 years, and just because I like this full disclosure thing, we're not talking about an album as in REM greatest hits. It's more like a collection of 10 to 12 tracks. Some of them are only a minute long, but 12 standalone pieces of music a month, yeah. And all with a consistent theme. So it's almost like a set of Photoshop brushes or something. Instead of listening to the music while you have a glass of wine, you're going to use it as a resource in your own creative project. So that's the idea.
Right. Nice, yeah. And it's a different theme each month, so it gets you immersed enough. But
I'm running out of themes.
You get immersed enough, but you don't get sick of it. Perhaps.
Yeah, no, I don't get sick of it at all. It's the highlight of my production time. I mean, I'm in this room a lot, and that's very much the most fun
I mean, the changing of the theme every month. I mean, you don't get sick of it because you aren't doing it for like a year. One theme, you're having to kind of learn and immerse yourself. Like the 1 month you're immersing yourself in banjos and country music, and you know.
Exactly. I suppose it's a way. In fact, this kind of ties in with what we were going to chat about today. It's a way of forcing yourself to create templates.
Right.
I don't ever have to start a cinematic piece of music from scratch, pretty much as long as I'm working in Reaper, my program of choice. Introduced to me by you, thank you very much. So yeah, it's really just throwing your hat over the fence.
Cool. Well, maybe we shall play a quick song and then we can start discussing goals and setting goals. I'm curious to know a little bit about your process of setting goals.
Fantastic.
Kinda Sound Radio, the station for a global community.
Hope you guys enjoyed that tune. Originally Kaya Project. Loads of organic instruments in there. I have no idea where I found that track. It was just in a playlist of mine. It was out of place in that playlist. I was like, where did this come from? This is so nice. In any case, setting goals. That is our subject for the first half of the show. I guess I sort of had a bit of a breakthrough recently in terms of setting goals, and I'd sort of made a list of things that the phrasing was kind of useful. I basically wrote down, how could I become a more fulfilled human being? And it comes down to the reason I think this time it worked better than times in the past is because I was not thinking about what anyone else thought I should be. It was what deep down I wish I could do, and I maybe tell myself I can't do. In terms of little things like DIY and exercise and and it might not be the things that people think. It's just like I had to be honest with myself, and in a way I wasn't taking it too seriously either. I didn't think much of it at the time. It was only when I came back to this document a week later and I was like, okay, there's something I could do to get towards each of these things. So I just wrote down one first step, and it was often quite small, a thing that I could do. And suddenly just realizing, I guess, knowing that you're on the first step to something that you really, that your heart believes in, that's quite an exciting feeling. So I feel like it was a lot of why this time I feel like it's different from when I've done this in the past, was just the honesty. And that it didn't come from, it wasn't superficial either. I wasn't talking about what I'd like to do for a living, or I wasn't thinking about material things. It was really just about what is in my heart that bothers me about myself. And it's a part of oneself. It's sort of hard to look at sometimes, but it's quite valuable if you do.
Absolutely, man. And it takes bravery. It takes courage to be honest with yourself, and to speak like you're speaking now. And there is a bias in our culture, at least. Women are a lot better at talking about their feelings, their goals, their ambitions, their challenges than men are. Men don't connect over those things, typically, just generalizing, of course. And we're encouraged to, sort of gather in groups and talk about anything except our problems. And that's how guys communicate generally. So when you do take the vulnerable step of opening up, like you seem to be doing, then your rewards are the more sincere interaction with other men and other people that you're looking for. And people, those who are on your wavelength will gravitate towards you because they sense that you're not just there. Obviously, there's nothing wrong with putting aside there's nothing wrong with being frivolous and fun and having a good time and letting your hair down with other people, but it can't just be that. And I feel that we're all pressured to show our best side all the time by this repeat exposure to often fantastical images, TV, social media.
Yeah.
And it takes real guts, man, to really be honest and say, wait a second, the expectations that are being placed on me are not real, and they're distorting my own sense of self-respect or my own direction in life. And I wish to change that. And to make that conscious decision once, you might have an inspirational moment. Fantastic. Yeah. But the actual work is the repeated decision, momentary, in this present moment, the repeated decision to claim control of your life and to admit the responsibility that you have, whether you like it or not. It's your life, you know?
Yeah. I think something else that was empowering in terms of just having those first steps, what I realized was I had also put up, because I hadn't maybe acknowledged some of the things I wanted to do, I hadn't written them down, I had put roadblocks up mentally as to why they wouldn't happen yet. And it was often basically right now, for example, I can't necessarily start the day playing drums every day because I'm not able to have a drum kit in my current abode, and certainly not playing it at 7 a.m. And my expectation had always been I wouldn't be here this long. Every year there's another reason why why I won't be in the same place next year, and then I'm here again. So it's also about, I mean, that's just an example, but I realized it manifested itself in various places in my life where I had thought some circumstance was going to change, and you can't wait for things to change. You have to actually make do with what's in front of you. So those first steps are, can I make some small, even if it feels almost insignificant, but a small step, a toe in the right direction? That is already very motivating and encouraging and gets your brain to actually think about the bigger picture.
And the possibilities. You know, there are people with more opportunities than other people. There's no doubt about that. But regardless of where you are on that ladder or that spectrum, however you want to see it, there is not a person alive. There has never been a person alive who cannot in some way improve their life, who cannot in some way be more sovereign over their own existence and claim their own life. Denying that is a road to excuses and ultimately personal failure of some kind, whether it's the lingering discontent of everyday life or massive tragedy.
Yeah.
And it's not just about avoiding that. It's about looking at your place in the entire universe and saying, this is a really big opportunity. This is not the time to be messing around. This is not a dress rehearsal. And to look at it with that seriousness, and at the same time, that if you can do that without getting too sucked into your own gravity and say, they also sort of know, there's sort of no way you can mess it up either. It's all free. It's all a gift. You can make mistakes and fall down potholes and all that. But the overall trajectory from your, the point where you become an adult to the end of your life should be something along the lines of, let's just make things a little bit better. Let's make it a little bit easier. Let's give a little bit more. Let's love a bit more. Those are the hard decisions. Much easier to do, like the stuff that I've been doing for the last 3 days here in quarantine, basically just playing games and guitar. Although guitar is a type of practice, so I don't know so much about the games.
Yeah,
it's just me.
I don't know. I think everyone has some sort of an escape, and I think it can be good if you make the time for it. Then it's a relief on your brain and your general well-being. You will thank yourself for those times. I don't regret the times where I've had a bit of an escape, but I guess it's just about managing them and managing. I think it's necessary. If you really don't have an escape, that's how people end up having breakdowns.
Totally, yeah. No, yeah, games are an easy target, and I agree with you. I just think of it in the same way that I think of a phone. Like, your downtime, your counterbalance time is a tool. It's not the point. The point is not to set up your life so that you can lie on the couch, because you won't be happy like that. People aren't happy. The great question, what would you do if you had all the time and money in the world? Most people assume that to live the jet ski island lifestyle would make them happy forever, and it just doesn't.
No.
You don't have to walk that path to know that. So then the question is, well, what does make me happy? And that is a really good question, because the stuff that makes you happy, generally speaking, the stuff that sustains you with this kind of positive nourishment throughout your life is also a blessing to others. And, generally speaking, the people that are creating wealth and creating inspiration are people that are benefiting it immensely from doing it and creating communities around them that benefit. So it's like that, the candle lighting another candle. It doesn't diminish the original flame in any way, which is a great motivation from an altruistic or a philanthropic point of view to pursue happiness. To actually look at the source of your own pleasure, to have that amount of self-knowledge and self-governance, to look at the source of your own happiness, and not just in a hedonistic state, like I'm talking about sustained long-term joy, and to actually admit that is what you should be doing with your time, for yourself and others.
And these things also change. One has to sometimes reevaluate those things. You might find that your goals shift, but I think if it stems from a core things about yourself and what you know to be true, then it's much easier to remain focused. In fact, work won't necessarily feel like work when you know that you're achieving something beyond what you're doing right now. That's what makes right now completely worthwhile, and you'll be willing to make sacrifices. People complain about, I don't have the time, but if you really sit down and assess where you're going, then you might find that you have that time, because it means that much to you, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Momentary awareness is the antidote to that type of excuse. It's an easy excuse to make. I don't have the time, I don't have the money, and those two might be true, but the problem with saying those words out loud and the power that language carries is that you then assume that will always be the case, and you reinforce it in that moment.
Very good
you reinforce
point,
the state that you feel like you're in. A better way to phrase that would be to say, right now I feel like I don't have the time or the money to achieve what I need. And I'm constantly looking for ways to, because when you take control of your language, you actually start to rebuild the house that you live in. Your language is so powerful. There's such a difference between an anti-war rally and a peace rally, because what you pay attention to expands. We've had a similar conversation on the show before. So actually watching the words that come out of your mouth is it's like, I don't know, in this game that I'm playing. So I'll tell you about this game I'm playing. I've spent probably about 20 hours in it in the last 3 days.
Nice. You are in quarantine, we'll remind people.
Yeah, I'm in quarantine. This is a disclaimer, yeah. And I'm a sucker for like fantasy, medieval stuff. And the music's beautiful. And then, in these games, you equip your character and you level up and you attain new skills and all of that kind of thing. You can take a look at your own life in that way. These games are modeled on how people could approach their own lives. And I like this new tool I've been given. I've never been into games, but now I'm like, oh, right, there's this whole economy around your abilities and your skills. So it makes your own efforts in goal setting and achieving what it is you're trying to achieve, it makes it far more of a strategic thing, because you get to a point where you get to a point where you realize that life is mostly just about consequences. It's got less to do with right and wrong and more to do with what will happen and what won't happen based on your experience and your intelligent ability to predict outcomes. So for example, if you cross the street without looking, you're going to get knocked over. You might miss it. The car might miss you this time, but they're going to get you at some point. So it's habit. And under this, the topic of what we wanted to chat about today is goal setting. At the heart of goal setting is actually creating habits, and that's a tough thing. Haven't you, well, you and I and everyone, haven't we all struggled to make something stick in the past?
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
that's for me what changed it for me now. I feel is having the why, and why am I doing those things? So it's not just chasing. I'm not
Yes.
forcing myself anymore because I know why I'm doing it. It's not actually. It's become easier actually because I know why I'm doing it. And it's obviously there's superficial reasons you could say why I'm doing it, but again, that's often the why might have been because of someone else's why that they pushed onto me. Whereas now, because it's a why that I believe in, it makes it a very different situation. So it's sort of a holistic approach to setting goals is how I feel like I've come up about it, because I could have tried to sit down and decide what I should be doing with my time, and I would have gone about it backwards because I needed to know what matters to me first, and I am not even at the point of knowing what I want to do necessarily yet, but I feel like there's a few steps I needed to take before that it's about just having that holistic approach to your well-being, your fulfillment, your values as well.
Dude, all that stuff is just so, it feels like it's what you're trying to get to, it's what you're trying to dig down to. And the 6 feet of soil and garbage that you have to get through to get there, it's prohibitive. That's why we fall down when we're trying to create like positive habits or whatever, is because it's difficult, man, to like remind yourself, why am I sifting through discarded milk jugs? Is there anything? This is a great thing for figuring out what it is you're trying to do. The big question, a big question that I get, faced with all the time is, what if this goes nowhere? And this is a scary question because you don't know if you're walking down the road you want to go on or if you're walking into a cul-de-sac.
Right.
And I wish I could say that's and now I've got some very smart and insightful thing to say about it, but I've dealt with this question and struggled with this question my whole life, and I live the question constantly, and I still go down these rabbit holes, and it's mainly out of curiosity, and often it's a complete waste of time. I mean, I could have, in certain respects, I could have done a lot better by now. I feel that way. And when I say done a lot better, I don't mean just on, the terms of success and all of that. I mean, like on a personal level too. I've sold myself quite short by holding on to things, holding on to old mental patterns and decisions, which are mainly types of indecision, that have prevented me from really stepping up and being, the person I'm trying to become. And I think that's kind of true for anyone who has a couple of days of silence to look at what's really going on in their lives. Like there's stuff holding you back, and there's stuff holding me back. And I guess part of goal setting, when we think of goal setting, it sounds like a podcast about how to earn $100,000 a month in one of those. It sounds like one of those. But actually goal setting is really about answering the big question, which is, what am I trying to do? What's the big picture here? Is it really to retire on a yacht? Is it really to have a studio like, Hans Zimmer or whatever? And I think it probably goes deeper than that for most people, but I don't know because I've forgotten all my past lives. So here we are again, figuring it out, trial and error.
Yeah. I feel you. Yeah, that's a thing, I guess, about reassessing the path that you're traveling on. It's interesting. I mean, what you touched on now reminded me of a tangent. It's not like either of us have all the answers, but in terms of, I'm losing my thought. My train of thought just went out the window. I'm looking at your album, The Benefit of Humans, and I was wondering if there are any song lyrics that might be pertinent to this topic. I see Lovers Calling. That's the first one that struck out at me, and Dancing on My Gravestone also struck out at me, because someone pointed out earlier on another show that the word fun is in funeral. So So
That's great. There's an audio drama about a family, dark comedy audio drama about a family called the Fun Family. If you double N, they run a funeral home, and it's it's quite a scream. I think they probably got that humor too. Yeah, man. Well, I mean, it means a lot to me that you were involved in that project. I consider it ours, and the lyrics in that album, the lyrics. I suppose it was a return to when I was like younger. I was doing only open mics, like white guy with a guitar, like pretty much the formula, singing about heart-wrenching stuff and emotional issues. And geez, I've come such a long way, and I've realized that okay, that's where I come from, So I sat down and actually wrote stuff that I considered meaningful, and I picked stuff from the past. It's been 10 years, 10 years into the making of that album, some of the stuff I started years ago. Yeah, I mean, so I think the most, many lifetimes has got more of a sort of spiritual aspect to it. Dancing on My Gravestone, the idea behind that is just like, yeah, so live with your mortality in mind, because that changes everything. When you are focused on, not in a morbid way, not saying, like in a negative way, but when you're focused on the inevitable, then you tend to get a lot more out of life and to see it for what it is. It's a practice which takes, a certain level of like prioritizing a conscious life, prioritizing the not just the immediate, not just what's happening now, but looking at long-term consequences. So there isn't really a song on that album which has that in mind, but it is a writing. It's a motif. It's a mental motif. There we go. It's a mental leitmotif which repeats in my music. The idea of being aware of your own death, and to try and phrase that in the most positive way possible, and to try and look at that in the most kind of joy-inducing way, that it's like, hey, look, we're here, the world around us is just Play-Doh, and we get to, do something quite special. Yeah, so constantly writing, constantly with that kind of stuff in mind. There's one verse from the upcoming album, which I'm doing at the end of this year. Hopefully I'm going to get it out by December. It's called Lifetime in a Day with You, and it's actually a love song. It's a love song about two people who just have one of these fantastic days where you're like, kicking your shoes off and dangling your feet off the pier at the seaside and having ice cream and watching movies together and stuff. But one of the last verses is, it says carpe diem at some point. But then one of these last verses does a bit of wordplay, which says, I'll read it for you. One of these days, they're going to whip out the spades, bury our shoes, shorts, skirts, dirty stockings, and shades. Today is a game. Never underestimate it or let it get away. And that's a track called Lifetime in a Day with You. And
nice.
At the heart of it, that's kind of what I suppose I'm here to say with the music. It's just like, don't take anything too seriously. It's all come and go.
Love it, man.
There's a level of like frivolity, okay, that comes with this. Like, I'm not trying to make out as if this is like a big, like sit in a lotus position for like 48 hours or 48 years or whatever. This is just something that every so often, like, I might be making a cup of coffee and I go, oh yeah, I have hands. Oh yeah, like real momentary awareness. And it always has the same effect of like making stuff lighter. There's a buoyancy towards it. And this buoyancy is actually starting to now burst apart at the seams for me. Because as I mentioned, when I was younger, it was all about heavy hitting, kind of nailing the message home, like you hammer a coffin, like, like really like people have to know that life is not a dress rehearsal, and this kind of very grand, and that doesn't work when you're like on a stage, because that's not what they're there for, It took me about 20 years to realize that. There you go, the lucrative singer-songwriter funeral market. No, it took me a long time, dude, to realize that it's just, it's got to be more like a game, because it is a game. The goal setting, the reaching your levels, the reaching your chosen financial amounts, that's like buying a suit of leather armor in one of these games. It's the same exact thing. The real life is a game. And so with this approach, this joy is starting to like burst apart at the seams for me. We've got this wonderful new future, which I perceive, you can call it the creator economy, the gig economy, the fourth industrial revolution, whatever you want to call it. People like me with creative skills and a back catalog of really, like decent work. We're empowered like we've never been before. In the past, for me, it was always about trying to sneak in a bit of music in between my day job. And now the role of creative work, not just music, but creating educational resources for some of the English students I teach, creating podcast resources like this book I've just written called Make a Podcast Worth Sharing, creating music backing track resources, video, and then, of course, all the social media stuff on top of that to help spread the word. I'm starting to feel more and more empowered by my position as a skilled, independent, self-reliant creator, and that's coming through in my music. So in these backing tracks, I'd like to play you something which can only be described as silly. It's ridiculous. I'm a 40-year-old guy, and I'm starting to write these, you could call them audio logos or audio intro tracks for streamers on Twitch who have, before they start their screen, you have like a starting soon screen.
Yeah.
Now, the idea is instead of having generic music there, you have music which is, written for the channel. So it's got lyrics with the name of the channel, the name of the host, and the subject matter involved.
Right.
So I'm going to start pushing this angle a little bit. But in the meantime, I've written some generic versions of these just to kind of get the ball rolling. I'd like to play you one of these now.
Go for it.
Let's see. Just tell me if you can hear this. Volume up, down.
Perfect.
Cool, yeah. So this is a gamer called 2-Bit Tommy who hired me to create this for his 8-bit gaming channel. Awesome. And it was such fun. Take a listen. You stretch it out. You get one of those. So that's a flavor over there.
Nice.
Here's the climax. Yeah, over into
Awesome.
the chorus. If this was a pop song in the 80s, it'd be like, some serious vibing. And then it goes back to part A. There's another one over here that's got no lyrics to it, but I'll play you this one, which is a joke. This is my channel. Listen to this. Hello. Looking up to the screen. Welcome. This is my channel. Good to see you. It's kind of like Mr. After Party.
Yeah.
Looking up to the screen. This is my channel. We're almost done. Welcome. And now I spaz out the end like. Looking up to the screen. Thanks for stopping by. I mean, you can't take that seriously, but I play it to everyone I can because I feel like this type of stuff represents a new freedom that I feel, a self-confidence, and like I am a spaz, I am a dork, like I always have been, like youngest child dancing in front of the TV. That's who I am. So there's, the challenge now is to convey that fun without, I suppose, without compromising on the quality I'm trying to deliver, because it's difficult. When people see that you're a clown, then it's automatically assumed that you don't know what you're doing. So I've got to really like pump out this stuff now. I'll do just the second half of one more of these tracks. Cool. This is more of a guitar-driven stuff. And the lyrics, again, are welcome to my channel, welcome, you're going to stay until the end, that kind of thing. Here we go. Welcome to my channel, friend. Now you are here, you'll stay to the end. Welcome to my channel, friend. Now watch me kick it while you stay till the end. Watch
watch me kick it while you stay till the end.
It's such fun, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, it's the highlight of my month these days is making these packs. And then I make them freely available for people so I can build a name around what I'm doing. Because it's the idea. It's not the music. It's the idea of branded audio content. Like you guys have got the kind of sound jingles every time you switch shows or whatever. It's that exact, but it's more, it's branded, and it doesn't have to be super expensive because I am a solo self-reliant composer.
Yeah.
So I've got a recipe for something here, and I'm gonna try this out for the next chapter and see what kind of results I get.
I dig it, man.
Thanks, man. But puts a smile on your face, puts a smile on your viewers'
That's the
faces.
thing,
That's the
man.
important thing. Yeah.
Yeah. It's something, it's a skill that I've always admired. That it's just people who are able to make people smile with their craft. It's just such it's a gift to be able to share that, you know.
Yeah, and well, that's what we have to do. You know, if we're able to do it, we have to do that.
For sure.
Yeah.
Nice. Ooh,
Cool,
I can
man.
see your screen. Fancy.
What screen can you see?
I can see Reaper.
Oh,
The
did I
music-
switch it by
The
mistake?
music program Reaper is what I ever see.
Oh.
Yes.
Great. I'm glad that's all you're seeing. I must have switched it by mistake. Here
All
we go.
good.
Let's just change that back.
Cool.
Yeah.
So our last section, I guess, the other topic that I was thinking about chatting about was just the creative process in terms of finding inspiration. And I guess to some degree, the stuff you're doing now, it seems to be finding inspiration in the needs of particular areas of the internet, basically, whether it's podcasts or Twitch streamers. You know, where are you finding your sources of inspiration?
Well, I don't really know how to answer that. What I do feel, though, this is the way I feel it, is that like there's a category of language that, sorry, I'm getting all meta. Like this is what
That's
I do
cool.
immediately. I can't just give a straight answer. There's a category of language that encourages creative people to think as if they're special snowflakes, and I discourage all type of language like that. I don't like sayings like "follow your dreams" and inspiration and all that. Though the word inspiration, it means breath, it means inhale, but actually it's kind of a code word in the professional industries. It's a code word for like copy. So when people say, where did you get your inspiration? The expected answer is not going to be, I sat in the forest for 4 hours and had a vision of a mandala coming out of a black hole. That's not the answer. The answer is I listened to, some Alexander Desplat film scores and I went in that direction. And that's what inspiration means to me now. And I don't want to take it away from anyone else, but I don't really have a source, is what I'm saying.
Right.
What I do is I sit down for however long it is, like 30 hours a month, in chunks. And whether I'm inspired or not, I make sure that I've got my 10, I call them wireframes, which are just the skeleton compositions for the next month's release. I make sure I've got my 10 wireframes done. And if I don't have them done by Tuesday, then I'm in trouble because it's going to be late. And so I don't really have time to
So
think
hang on,
about,
is that
what
how
should
long?
this be?
How long does it take you to set up those wireframes?
Well, I can. I mean,
Is that like a week, or is that a couple of days?
No.
Like a 10?
No, I'm talking about just the literally just the chord changes for a 1 minute piece of music. So you can do 5 of those in an hour. You know?
Right.
But
Okay.
those are the most basic.
Yeah.
So you start with that
The building
level
blocks.
of real light pencil
Yeah.
sketching, and then you work on it from there. Yeah.
Do you ever end up changing them later?
Yeah, the idea is to make them malleable. So I'll place markers. If I had time, I'd load up one of these sets now. I'll place markers on the chord changes. So, for example, let's say it's an AABA song. Okay,
Yeah.
it's just 2 A's, a B, and an A. I'll place markers at the A and at the start of the A's and the B's, but then that very quickly becomes boring and formulaic. So the actual art is finding out what can I do to this to make it a little bit more, of a musical piece than just
Right.
something that sounds like you downloaded a MIDI file off the internet. And often it's tempo related. So you put in an extra bar at pivotal moments to increase the tension, the build-up, or you change key.
Right.
So key modulation, time signature modulation. These are ways to really mess with it within the constraints of library music. You don't want to go too far. I mean, I'd love to do like 7/4 stuff, but it's really just about finding a balance between the formulaic and a little bit of putting yourself into it. It's like and then once you've got I start on the piano because that's where all my ideas mostly come from. And then once you've got the compositional piano part, then you can start working on instrumentation. And that's fortunately now, because I'm getting so good at this, that's no longer guesswork. I've done a lot of experimenting, and I've always got a reference track now. So for example, it's the TV intro sitcom themes from the 1990s. So Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Family Matters, Friends, Full House. I get those off YouTube and I copy them.
Yeah.
And I listen to what's in those songs, guitar, there's a tambourine, there's a sax, and I copy that. And that's it. That's the entire approach.
Yeah.
And then when someone comes along and says, hey, can you do me something like a special Snowflake would do? Then I'll put my heart into it and make it more like of a handcrafted product. But for now, I'm happy with this. It's teaching me how to be a professional, how to produce music to spec on a deadline. And I'm not starting from scratch because I've done this for the last 20 months in a row. So
Yeah.
I feel like I've got a good pace going now, you know?
Yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, I think that's something that I was wanting to touch on anyway. But it's funny because, I was actually expecting the meta conversation, but we got some nice nuts and bolts there too. What I was going to also say is, I think that's something that people forget is people working professionals, often they don't have time to rely on a muse. They sit down to work, whether there is something there or not. And often that practice is what will bring the inspiration. Once you're actually doing it, you'll get fired up, or sometimes there's a turning point. I always find a lot of pieces of music that I start, there's a turning point where I suddenly become invested in it. And I sometimes don't even hit save sometimes when it's more of a hobbyish thing that I'm doing. I might not even save until I suddenly think, okay, this is something I might be invested in. But it's in terms of if you're meeting a deadline, you don't have time to second guess yourself in a way. You just have to keep going.
Yeah, I mean the stakes are so low too. You know, it's not like I'm getting commissioned to do this stuff. I mean, some of it I am, but it's mostly just about it's the practice. You know, it's the practice of showing up and meeting your own personal deadlines, even though after all of this time, and 2 years feels like a long time, that there are still so few eyeballs or ear holes on my work that it's gonna just, the temptation to quit is gonna be endless. There's probably never gonna come a time where I go, now's the time that everything's fine and I'm doing it for a reason. There's always going to be a reason. It's always it's music. It's people don't pay for music. It's not, so this is a labor of love that it's a side hustle. It's a labor of love, and I put a lot more time and effort into it than I should. But instead of letting that like statue erode, I'm letting other stuff in my life go now, because music has always been that important to me. And I'm looking around going, hang on, but this is not worth it, and that's that. And actually I'm worth 10 times what I thought I was. It's a good feeling that at that stage. But to get to that point, for this thing of goal setting, like I mentioned earlier, what underpins achieving your goals is habit. I don't know anyone who's achieved their goals without getting into some kind of habit. Yeah. And habit is a process of making it through a dip. The dip is fun it's fun when you start, and then there's a dip, and then only do you start to see results. Same pattern for everything. Same pattern for every difficult habit. Obviously, bad habits are easier to get through. They're the opposite. They're the inverted roller coaster. So bad habits are like the on-ramp. Takes effort. It takes effort to become a junkie, and then once you're riding high, everything's great, and then things start to go down. Whereas with forming positive habits, it's the opposite. It's kind of starts out fun and easy, and then it goes down because no one's listening or no one's paying attention. Your test of character is how you respond to that inevitable dip. And don't fool yourself into thinking it won't happen. Set a goal. The only certainty is that you're going to get resistance from yourself mentally, and you're going to get indifference from others. And if you can prepare yourself and steel yourself for those two inevitable attacks on your feeling of sort of, ability and sovereignty, then you'll make it through. And that's what I'm doing. I'm making it through. It also helps, of course, to be clear in what you're trying to achieve. This is another thing about what I've done is actually I've been very vague. And I think that's part of the reason I haven't achieved a lot of stuff is because I don't have a very clear idea. I don't have any targets. Most of the time, I don't have any targets. I'm just like that line from Batman Begins. The Joker's like, I'm like a dog chasing a car. Like I wouldn't know what to do if I caught it, And this is holding me back, and it's something that I need to change, certainly.
You touched on that. I mean, I was also, that was a point that I was thinking about earlier, was in terms of a cycle I realized I had been in, and that COVID stopped for me, was I had years or seasons of feast and famine, where suddenly out of the blue I was seemingly riding high and getting lots of inquiries and doing a lot of DJing and playing in bands, and then there'd be periods of slump, and there was no rhyme or reason to it. It wasn't necessarily, sure, there was a general trend towards winter being a bit quieter, but for the most part there seemed to be no rhyme or reason to the feast and famine of work. And every year I sort of thought, partly because of recognition, you get a slightly bigger profile. You've been doing it for long enough that people know you for that one thing. But I was actually quite relieved when the cycle was broken by COVID, and I realized a lot of it was me saying to myself I hadn't done as much as I would like, hadn't put in my all into making something work. So I'd kept on hanging on, thinking that I hadn't changed. So part of the circumstances not changing was that I hadn't actually changed, or I hadn't put in 110%. So I felt like I must keep trying until I can tell myself that I've put in 100% and it still didn't work. At that point, I'd be willing to quit, but I would never have gotten to that point because I didn't have the targets in place.
Man, you are being so honest with yourself, my man. You don't hear people talk like that. You don't hear people talk like that at all. It's always someone else's fault. And you know what? Life responds to you. It's not the other way around. Things don't happen to you. You didn't, sure, there was a car accident and you lost someone. That happened to you, yes. But what else happened to you is that you decided that was going to be something that continued to traumatize you.
Yes.
And day after day, year after year, you are deciding. So that's a negative example. Positive example, life responds to you. So what you say I'm not talking spiritually or metaphysically. The words that come out of your mouth are constructive. They build, they are bricks. Every word, every phrase, every belief that comes out of your mouth is a brick. And by saying it, you can create bricks out of thin air. See, this is being an alchemist. If you want to change your life, change your language and start to say things out loud to yourself or to others with courage and without thinking it's a big waste of time or being immature and saying this is just a big ironic, sarcastic thing. Actually claim your life, and that is going to result. The world will respond to you. The universe will respond to you. It's just basic natural law, So put that out there. And I want to encourage anyone who's listening. Also, just life responds to you. You are the originator, or you're the source of it. Yeah,
absolutely. Cool, dude. We've come to the end of the show. It came pretty quick. I think that was super interesting and productive. Thank you for that. That was inspiring.
What a pleasure being back on the show with you. Thank you very much, Django.
Cool. And check out John on johnbartmann.com or John is the Music on Twitter. And here is Love is Calling by his band Pravda.